welcome back to my channel. My name is Cho Kwan and I passed the MRCS Part A exam in 2021 and the MRCS Part B exam in 2022. This video will be mainly about how to pass the MRCS Part B examination and what makes a candidate more likely to succeed compared to others, what are the helpful resources, and is there a magic formula to pass this examination? So let's dive in. So the first question is, what is the MRCS examination? The MRCS examination consists of two parts. The MRCS Part A exam, which is a multiple choice exam, and the MRCS Part B exam, which is a OSCE exam, similar to the ones that you'll encounter in medical school. So one of the important things to know about this exam is it's conducted by the 4 Royal Colleges, namely the Royal College of Ireland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and England. So with the 4 Royal Colleges, the exam is basically the same. It's just the location that you would like to sit the exam in and which college you would like your final diploma from. So what are the important questions I get asked is, what's the key factor in passing the exam? I think the main thing that people need to pass this exam is consistency, given that it's an OSCE exam. And I actually came across this idea from this book Atomic Habits from James Clear the other day, and I think it makes a very good point about how to pass this exam. And the idea is called the aggregation of marginal gains, where we accumulate small advantages to eventually reach our goal. For example, this is a graph of how people improve over time, and this is day 1 and this is day 365. So let's say if I just got 1% better each day for 365 days, I would eventually get much better, up to 37 times better by the end of the year. And this is the idea of compounding and the idea of marginal gains over the year. So it's more about consistency and building up small advantages over the year. So with this idea of compounding over time, you are making time work together with you. And what I'm saying here is that good habits and consistency make time your ally in preparing for these exams. Alright, so the next question is, what is the eligibility criteria to sit for this exam? So first, you need to have passed the MRCS Part A exam. And then secondly, you need to have a medical degree that's recognized by the General Medical Council in the UK or the Medical Council in Ireland. And finally, you need to have sat for this exam within 7 years of passing the MRCS Part A exams, and you'll have 4 attempts of this. What's the format of the MRCS Part B examination? It consists of 17 examination stations and 2 rest of preparation stations. The entire exam is about 3.5 hours. Each station is about 10 minutes. 1 minute for reading the STEM at the beginning of the station and 9 minutes for the actual station itself. For example, for the anatomy, physiology, or pathology stations, you'll start off by reading the STEM at the beginning. Then the examiner will prompt you, or a bell will go off at about 1 minute to tell you that this is the beginning of the exam. And you'll have that 9 minutes to answer through the questions one by one. My recommendation for these type of stations is, if you weren't sure of the answer at the time, you would be able to skip that question and go on to the next question. Try and maximize your points and then come back to it later. Now, for the history taking and examination stations, you'll have 6 minutes to take a history or perform the examination, and then 3 minutes to present your relevant findings and answer the questions from the examiner. And for the giving information and receiving information stations, it's usually preceded by a rest station and then 9 minutes for the station itself. Now, each station is marked out of 20 points, and the candidate is examined in 2 ways. They're assessed based on the questions answered and the final mark awarded, and the general impression from the station, where the examiner circles whether they are a pass, borderline, or fail for the station. The exam consists of 2 broad content areas, namely applied knowledge and applied skills. The applied knowledge section comprises of 9 stations. namely 3 anatomy stations, 2 pathology stations, and 3 critical care and surgical physiology stations. The applied skills sections consist of a total of 9 stations, and 4 of this will be communication skills, 2 will be history taking, and another 2 will be information giving to either a patient or colleague, and the other half of this where there will be 5 stations, namely for clinical and procedural skills, 3 of which will be examination stations and 2 will be common procedural skills. In these stations, there are 4 main broad areas tested, namely clinical knowledge and its applications, clinical and technical skills, professionalism, and communication skills. So think of this when you're thinking how to prepare for the exam and what are the main areas tested. To pass the MRCS Part B examination, you must pass both the applied knowledge and applied skills broad content areas. And here's an example marking sheet to show you how they are actually scoring this examination and how you have to pass both these broad content areas to pass the examination. What's the official passing rate for the examination? From the official statistics from the Royal Colleges, it could range from somewhere between 54% to about 72%. In 2019, the pass rate was somewhere between 65 to 72% of candidates, and in 2022 the passing rate was somewhere between 54 to 58% of candidates, which is slightly higher than Part A examinations. Next question is when the exams? The exams are usually in February, May and October in the UK, and there are numerous other exams held at international venues by the Royal Colleges. For the exact availability for the international locations, I would check the Royal College website for each individual college and choose the location and time that's best for you. What about the actual cost of the exam? The exam can actually be quite expensive. It costs just £997 already to take the exam, and then you have to take into account the amount of money it takes for the question banks, the books needed for the exam, courses that you can attend, and the traveling and hotel expenses for the exam. So it can get quite expensive, so take that into account when preparing to sit for the exam, and sit for a time when you feel you are most ready. Right, so now we've reached the section on what are the helpful resources to prepare for the examination. Now, when I prepared for the MRCS Part B examination, I used 2 main question banks. I used the Pass the MRCS question bank. I actually found this very helpful because it separated into the 4 main sections that were tested, namely anatomy, physiology and critical care, pathology, and then clinical and communication skills. So it was very structured and had all the broad content areas that were tested. And here's an example. I don't have an active subscription now, but on the website there's a trial which is quite reflective of the actual website contents. It's basically like a virtual station. So you get the question in front of you, and then there's an answer that you can see, and you can compare your own answer to the actual question bank answer. And the other question bank from the EMRCS is actually quite similar, and it mainly consists of questions and an answer box where you can key in your answers and then compare your answers to the actual exam recommended answer. So how I approach this is I found these question banks very helpful to practice with a friend. I would sit down maybe with 2 or 3 friends. So one person would be asking the question, and then another person will be evaluating the answer, and then you'll get active feedback. Or sometimes when I was alone, I would practice this by myself. I would sometimes put a camera in front of me and then record my answers and then review and see how smooth my presentation was and see how I could improve on this. Now remember, this is an OSCE exam, and performance during the examination does matter. How confident you sound, your tone, and the smoothness of your answer actually does matter. So I would put in time to practice and make it as smooth as possible for exam day. Practice makes perfect, and consistency is the key. Now, what about book recommendations? The main books I used for this exam were the doctor exam books. There's a doctor exam book 1 and book 2. So book 1 was mainly anatomy, physiology and pathology, and book 2 was the clinical and communication skills. And I found these two very helpful as they were covering a broad amount of content and was actually very helpful for revision. As always, the basic science for the MRCS examination book was very helpful for revising basic concepts, including anatomy, physiology, and pathology. Another book that I would recommend is the Get Through Anatomy book, which is this small green book. It's quite thin, but very, very helpful because it has very good diagrams on anatomy and it will help you label the anatomical structures. It's got good cadaveric diagrams and also very good explanations to help you improve your anatomy knowledge for the examinations. And I found the content very relevant to prepare for the exams. The other books that I found helpful was this one, the Surgical Critical Care for the MRCS OSCEs and Applied Physiology Vivas for the MRCS. And these are books that I would recommend as they were very helpful in my preparation. Another good resource that I would recommend for the MRCS exam is having a good anatomy atlas. The one that I used was Gray's Anatomy Atlas for its good 3D and hand-drawn diagrams, which were helpful maps of the territory that I needed to study, and using Ackland's Atlas for the good cadaveric images, and it was very helpful for actual exam day when you would have the cadaveric images in front of you or actual cadaveric specimen and had to identify specific regions. So the good thing about subscribing to the Pass the MRCS exam question bank would be that they give you access to Ackland's as well. So I would strongly consider this as it was one of my main resources for preparing for the exam. Now, in preparing for the examination, other resources that are helpful was going for courses. When I was preparing for my exam in Malaysia, I actually went to 2 courses that are available in Malaysia. One at that time was Dr. Tuki's course, where he spread out the course over 2 days to cover various clinical examinations and procedural skills, and found it very helpful. I would give it a look. And the other course I went for was Dr. Reda's course, where there was mainly anatomy, physiology, and critical care and pathology stations practice, and going through the content areas throughout a day. And between the two, I would go for at least the clinical skills and procedural skills course, as it's very helpful to have someone show you how the examination is done, show you the finer points and correct your technique. So I would highly recommend going for a clinical skills and communication skills course if possible. Final resource to prepare for the exam is actually practice. Practice with your friends, practice with your colleagues, practice at work. Now, there's no better substitute for preparing for actual clinical exam and OSCE than actual practice with someone where you can get direct feedback on how you're doing, how you can improve. And it's more of fine-tuning your performance for the final day of the examination. So find a study partner or someone to practice with you, and you'll be well prepared to sit for this examination. Now, the final resource that I would recommend is getting an actual suturing kit and a knot tying kit to practice before the exams, so they can practice at home and appear very smooth during the examinations. Another question I often get asked is, when's the best time to sit for the examination? Well, according to one of the studies done, the best time to sit for the exam is during core surgical training, or usually when you've worked for 1 or 2 years, and then you have the breadth of clinical knowledge needed for the exam stations. And this is also a good time because you have seen many patients, able to recognize different conditions, and had time to practice all the skills. Another question I get asked is, how much time do I need to prepare for the examination? It can be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. I would recommend as a minimum, but for myself, I took about 1 year between the Part A and Part B examination so that I would have enough time to go through the syllabus, practice the questions, practice with friends, get familiar with the clinical examinations, and practice my communication skills. Remember, it's OSCE where your practice actually shows. So this is where at the beginning of the video we're talking about the marginal gains, getting this 1% better each day. Eventually by the end of the year, you would have made significant gains up to 37 times better. Now let's talk about some helpful tips for preparing for the examination. I find it very essential to talk to previous candidates that have recently sat for the examination so that you can find out what are the questions that came out during the exam, what they struggled with, and what areas that they feel that you need to prepare more. And you will also get a good account of what are the kinds of questions that are being asked. And there's also this website called the MRCS Resources website. There's a link to very good resources to prepare for the exam, and also some links to past year papers that are helpful for preparing for the exam, where you can practice with your friends or colleagues and just get a good general idea of what's being tested. Then the other thing I would do is make sure I had a good amount of annual leave prior to the exam. I would try to take the exam at a time where I could get at least 1 to 2 weeks of annual leave so that I could have protected study time just to prepare for this. And it's also essential to get a question bank. I would not skip on this, and I will also get some books. If I had to get just 2 books, I would get both the Doctor Exam Book 1 and Book 2 together with the Pass the MRCS question bank. Now, the final thing that I would advise is to plan your journey early. Plan when you're going to take the exam, plan your flight and book a hotel early to make sure you get a comfortable place to stay before the exam and just relax. So by this time, you're already well prepared for the examination, and you get to relax right before and put yourself in a good mental state to sit for the exam. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.